Hello, Damien here from Cloud Technology Experts. And welcome back. We have been making good progress in our Linux Fundamentals series. In Lesson 1, we talked about why you should learn Linux in today's tech world. Then in Lesson 2, I'll walk you through how to install VirtualBox so you can practice along as you listen to the videos. Yesterday, in Lesson 3, we talked about how you can become familiar using your Linux desktop, like using Ubuntu to explore both the CLI and the desktop. And today, we're going to learn how to navigate the Linux file system. As usual, ensure you have your Ubuntu desktop up and running so you can follow along the practice. So these are the objectives. By the end of this video, you should have a good understanding of the Linux file structure. You should understand what we call the root file system, and you should be able to navigate your Linux environment like a pro. And if you're coming from Windows, you will be able to understand the differences between how the Windows system sees the file system and how the Linux environment sees the file system. All right, so the whole concept here is that in the Linux environment, the root file system starts with a /. Remember, this is a /, not the backslash, okay? And in Windows, they uses the backslash. In Linux, we uses the /. How do you differentiate between the two? One of the tricks I learned early in my career was that the / points forward. Okay, as you can see, this is pointing forward. If it were the backslash, it would be pointing back, not the front. Okay, so just remember, this is like a slash pointing forward. All right, and so what we mean by the fact that in Linux, everything starts from the root file system means that, for example, we don't differentiate between different drives with letters. Again, if you're coming from Windows, you might be used to things like C for one of the first hard disk, then D for maybe the second hard disk, and then E for the third hard disk. In Linux, as you can see here, everything starts with /dev, then VDA. For the first hard disk, second will be /dev, /VDB, and then the third hard disk could be something like /dev, /VDC. Now, we're not going to spend too much time on devices here, on Linux devices. Later on down the line, we might talk about them. But the fact here is that all the hard disks in Linux are going to be under this directory called /dev. So you can see here dev VDA, dev VDB, dev VDC. Unlike in Windows where you're going to see like C and D and E and all of that. Okay, so this / is what we call the root file system. And you cannot learn Linux without understanding the root file system because it's so important and it's so critical. Okay, so I will show you on the Linux system, but for now, let's just go through the few slides before I take you to the Ubuntu environment. Okay, so you can again just understand this is the /. Everything starts from the /. Everything starts from the root directory, okay? And under the root directory, you're going to find some top-level directories, which are represented here. So pretty much, these top-level directories, they follow a standard format for Linux. And in fact, there's a white paper written on this called the Linux file system directory structure. So the idea here is that it doesn't matter which Linux environment or Linux distro you're using, if it's Ubuntu, CentOS, Red Hat, whatever, these directories that we have over here, bin, sbin, etc, home, root, var, usr, tmp, dev, proc, these are all going to be available in every Linux environment. Some distributions might add one or two, remove one or two, but they're meant to follow this standard. And in a way, that makes life easier for Linux users because it doesn't matter where you are, you know where to find your files. you know where to put things. So there's a kind of a structure to it, and that could help you in being organized in how you manage your sysadmin duties. So as you can see here, we have under the directory, we have /bin. And now bin is a short form for binary. Okay. Then this one here, sbin, is system binaries. Then etc is just etc. Where then we have this /home, and then we have the /root, then the var, the usr, the temp, the dev, and the proc. Each one of them has the purpose why they exist, and that is all here. And then there are some examples here on this column. So bin, this is where you're going to find some user binaries. Like anytime you run a command like ls, copy, move, which we're going to talk about down the line, all those commands will typically reside under /bin. And likewise, sbin is for system administration binaries, commands that are used only by the admin or that require root privileges are stored under the sbin directories. Okay, so etc is another very important directory. This is where configuration files are stored. Anytime you install an application like Apache, the configuration files will be stored under /etc, which means if you need to change anything, just remember that will be the location. Then /home. Every user in Linux have a home directory. The home directory is where you can play around and do whatever you want to do with no restrictions on permissions. Other than the home directory, the users have a lot of restrictions when it comes to Linux securities and permissions. And as you continue to use Linux, you're going to come across a lot of these permission issues that you may have to resolve one way or the other. And again, down the line, we're going to learn what are Linux permissions and how do you set them. Okay, so every user has a directory under /home. And just like every user has a home directory, the root user also have a home directory, but it doesn't start in home. It starts in /root. All right. Then we have what we call the /var, which is for variable data. Things like log files are all stored in there. So again, as a Linux user, you're always going to have something to do with var, especially when you have to do some form of troubleshooting and you want to look at the logs. Okay. Then we have some programs that you can put under the USR. These are some of the programs that maybe you wrote them yourself or some developers decided to put them there. So you can also have some documents in these directories. Typically, these are put there directly when you install some certain applications. They'll put the documentations under /usr. Temp is temporary files. They can be auto-deleted. So if you store something in TMP, well, basically you have to be careful when you store things under TMP. Otherwise, the system might delete them without your notice. So that is something to be aware of. It's kind of like a scratch space. You put stuff in there. You don't need them for a long time. And at some point, the system just removes them. If you need them to be permanent, you probably want to put them somewhere else other than the /tmp directory. Then we have this /dev, which I mentioned earlier when I was introducing the concept of top-level directories. DEV means devices. These are pretty much things you attach to your system. Things like the hard disk, things like your floppy drives and USBs. All of them get mapped under /dev. Then proc, this is for kernel and process information. Whenever the processor comes on, whenever the kernel is trying to do its own stuff and is spinning up a lot of these processes, there are a whole lot of directories that get created under /proc. In fact, most things under /proc are live. Okay, there are things that the kernel is using actively, and when you shut down your server, most information there get cleared because again they get populated when the system is alive. Okay, so as you continue to use Linux, these directories will come to you. You will remember them just because you're using them all the time. But for now, just see how many of them you can recognize whenever you see them. You don't have to necessarily memorize them, but with time, all of them will stick. Okay, so when I go to the demo side of things, I will show you all these directories. All right, in a nutshell, together, these directories, they form the backbone of Linux. When you install software, store files, or change settings, you'll be interacting with all these directories one way or the other. So, and again, they're always available, so just get used to them. Okay, so pretty much now those are the top level directories. How do you move between them? These are some of the commands we're going to practice. In the previous videos, I already showed you some of this, but we're going to keep practicing these commands, and the more practice we do, the better you are going to get at this. So repetition is always helpful. So I'm going to repeat them. Okay. All right. So this time, let's go on to our Linux environment and practice some of these things. So I'm going to minimize this now and go to my Ubuntu. So here's my Ubuntu, and I'm just going to log in. And there we go. All right, so let me first of all get rid of that, and let me call it afresh. Who remembers the shortcut to bring the terminal? Okay, it's Ctrl-Alt-T. That brings my terminal right here. So again, I'm going to show you some stuff here, and I'll show you how to also do that from Nautilus. So this is the file browser for your Linux environment. So from the CLI, you need to remember the commands, but from here, you just double click and the system shows. Either way, you can either do things from here or from here, as I explained in the previous video. But if you're learning Linux, you might as well ensure you get used to the terminal, because sometimes you might not have the GUI, and so you'll be stuck with just the terminal. All right, so with this, let's see our directory structure. If I do ls/ there, I can see the color code is not helping, so let me do that. And now we can see the directories, okay? Better still, let's go in there. Let's do cd/, and let's do ls-al, and now we see the directories. Now, if you look carefully, you're going to see some of the directories we already explained to you. We have the bin there. In this case, it's showing that bin is actually linked to this directory here called user sbin. All right, then we have this one here called the boot directory. Then we have the CD-ROM. This is not standard. We have the DEV, which we talk about for devices. We have the etc, which is for configuration files. We have the home, which means all the users in this system are going to have a directory inside that. Then we have the lib, which is again it's a link to user lib. Okay, we have a bunch of these ones here, and then we have the media, where typically devices get mounted. For example, if you put your USB, it's going to get mounted directly on that /media. And we have the MNT, which is used for mounting stuff. If it doesn't get mounted in media, you can mount it here if you want. So typically there might be nothing under MNT, but you can mount stuff under there. Same with opt. You can mount things in opt as well, or you can also put stuff in there that you don't have any specific place to put them. Then we have the proc, which we already explained. This is where all the system processes are configured live, and then most of them disappears whenever the system reboots. Okay, then we have the root over there, and then we have the run directory. So the idea here is that we have the var of the USR. So some of these ones here, yeah, I have them here listed here, but like I was saying earlier, some of them may not be 100% standardized or standard, so some may be just unique. But the idea here is that everything starts from root, which is a /, and under that you're going to see all what we call the top level directories, and those top level directories are what we have here. These are owned by root, as you can see here, all of them owned by root. But when we talk about permissions, we'll explain more about what all this means. For now, just understand that the top level directories, these are owned by root because they are pre-populated, they are created when Linux gets installed. So basically they are owned by the admin. Okay, so now we have those. Let's see certain information, or let me show you how to see them from here. Here, see, I am inside my home directory, so which means if I go under /home, I only have two users. I have myself and I have VBox user. You see there's an X here showing that I cannot access this because this does not belong to me, but I can access this because this belongs to me. So that is the /home. I can do /etc, and I can see all the files under etc. Again, configuration files, you can see there are so many of them. Some are just there as files, some are there as directories, and anytime you install any application, that application will have a directory here or a file here for its configuration. Again, if standard formats are followed, some people may decide to put them somewhere else, but that wouldn't be standard. That wouldn't be good. Okay, so you can go to proc. Let's see if we have access to proc. Okay, so you have proc. You can see there, if you keep navigating this, they wouldn't make any sense to you under proc because these are basically used by the processor. You shouldn't really mess with those anyway. So if you go to root, now you see the directories we've been talking about. That's the bin, that's the boot, that's the dev, that's the etc, home, lib, media, mnt, opt, proc, root, run, sbin, srv, c, stamp, user, var. So again, it's easier to see here, but if you want to see from the CLI, just go into the CLI and do like we just did here, ls-al /, you're going to see the same thing. So here, just make it easier through Nautilus, the file browser for Linux. Okay, so that's pretty much the top level directory here. Some of them you won't see anything at this point, that. This one here, nothing is mounted in there. But if you go to dev, you're going to see the devices, as I was saying earlier. See here, we're going to have things like dev, VDA, or SDA. You see here, we're going to go down. You see the devices as they get populated. So let's see, dev, VC. Okay, if you look carefully, you see them, all of them will be here. You can see the X in front of them, meaning that these are root stuff. Don't play with them. For now, I'm just showing you where, what is inside each of these directories. Again, the TMP is here. The TMP, things that are not going to be permanent. Every now and then the system is going to wipe them off. And then you have the var, which contains all the log files for different applications. Var log is, this directory is very important for troubleshooting and a whole lot of stuff. You can have like var log messages, var log syslog. That syslog there contain the system logs. And whenever you're having some issues, you're most likely going to try to know what the problem is, and those information will typically be stored here. Again, if you want to go inside var log from the terminal, you just come here, you do ls var log. So again, I keep repeating, but anything you can do from the shell or the terminal here, you can also do from the GUI, but you're not going to always have the GUI to yourself, so learn to do things mostly from here. Okay, so let's do a few more playing around, like I can do to navigate your file system. So let's do some of those. If I say, who am I? It says that I am Damien Igbe. If I say pwd to see where I am, print working directory, you say I'm in the root directory. Now, if I do cd / that will take me to my home directory. Remember, currently the home directory is a /, which is for the root user. If I do cd, now I will have the squiggly sign, which is like the tilde sign, and that tilde sign now means my home directory. So pwd now shows I'm inside my home directory. So notice this, if I go here and do pwd, I'm inside my root directory. But if I do cd or cd swiggly or cd home, Damien eBay, these three are equivalent. So decide which one you prefer. cd, nothing in front, will always take you home. cd tilde will always take you home. cd /home / your username will also always take you home. So I'll prefer, well, I would say it depends on the scenario, but I always just prefer the shorter one, which is cd. So anywhere you are, again, pwd, you are there. Anywhere you are, if you go to Etsy, inside Etsy, let's say you go to another directory called gdb. Let's say you are in there. Maybe there's another directory here called gd. Okay, on and on like that. pwd, this is where I am. If I want to go straight to my home, I just do cd enter, and that will take me home to my home directory. All right, so those are shortcuts which can be helpful depending on what you're trying to do. All right, let's also see how to navigate to different directory structures. So in here, I'm gonna do mmkdir practice. I'm gonna go into practice, and I'm gonna make a mkdir practice 1. I'm going to go into practice 1. I'm going to say mkdir lab, and I say I'm going to go into lab. If I say pwd, now see how long the directory structure is to get to this place. Again, if I just do cd enter, guess what? Takes me directly home, and I can again navigate the system again. I can go to practice, and I can go to practice 1. I can go to lab, and I'm back here. Okay, so here, if I want to navigate back step by step, I can do cd ... means take me back one step, take me to the parent of where I am. So if I do cd ... that now took me to practice 1. If I do cd ... guess what? That takes me to practice, because it's going to take me back one step. Now pwd, I'm in practice. If I do cd ... where would that take me? Back to my home directory, because it's going to escape from here, and then it's going to go back to my home directory. So pwd, you see what that is. So again, you can keep navigating to where you want to go. So again, if I say practice, cd practice, practice, and I say practice 1, and I say lab, in here into this directory structure. So from here, what can I do? If I want, I can also do cd ... So I'm going back several steps, like first step, second step, third step. So who can guess where that will take us to? Doom. pwd, now we're inside our home, because the first cd back will bring me from lab to practice. The second one will take me from practice to practice, from practice 1 to practice. The third one will take me from practice to home directory, which is basically this one here. So those are different ways that you can keep navigating your environment. Again, you can do this from here. If you go now to my home directory, how do I go to my home directory from here? I can, different ways I can do this. I can either type here /home, put my name there, /home /Damien. Okay, that takes me home. In home, I had a directory called practice, which we just created. Then we have practice 1, then we have lab, and now I can create another directory here, and I can call it lab 2, and I can go into lab 2, and I can say new folder, lab 3, on and on like that. So you can see this is the directory structure. From home, I need to go to practice. From practice, I need to go to practice 1. From practice 1, I need to go to lab. From lab, I need to go to lab 2. From lab 2, I need to go to lab 3. And that is where I am at the moment. So that is exactly same as saying from the shell. Let's cd again, practice, practice 1, lab, and that is where I am. PWD, that shows me that is where I am, so I can navigate from here or navigate from the GUI environment. Okay, so under your home here, remember this is where you can do anything. You have a bunch of directories here. This is download. Remember, download starts with capital D. Linux is case sensitive, so capital D is different from small letter d. So here it starts with capital letter D. Don't forget that. Capital letter D for documents, capital letter D for desktop. And in the desktop here, notice if I create a file here, let's create a folder here, and let's call it practice, another practice in a different location. If I say create, I will see the practice here under my desktop. That is the practice we just created. And now that I open it from here, if I'm able to create a file in there, let's go to the terminal and create a file in that folder. So here I'm going to go to my home directory. I'm going to go to CD documents. Let's go CD desktop. In desktop, I see practice. In practice, let's touch a file here called touch file 1. And now if I go into practice on the desktop, I see file 1, which I just created over there. All right, so that is how easy it is to do things in Linux. So as you can see, whatever you do in one place will appear in the other place because they are all the same. So again, this is something that could be confusing to people. If I have different terminals here, terminal 1, terminal 2, whatever I do in any of this terminal, I'm still in the same Linux environment. I'm still accessing the same file structure. So if I'm in this shell or this terminal and I create a file here, touch file 2, or I am inside this terminal here, this tab, and I do touch file 4, all of them are going to be stored in here. Okay, see the files are there. It doesn't matter which terminal I do them from, I'm still within the same Linux environment, and all those things will get created. Okay, so let me see if there's any other command here that I would like to show you. Okay, so we did a pwd ls cd 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 swiggly cd nothing clear echo. So those are the basic commands I intend to show you this time around. The echo command, we can do more of that when you're scripting, but basically echo will help you to see what is inside an environmental variable, or just to print something to the CLI. So for example, that environmental variable stores my bash, stores my shell. So my shell is being bash. And if you type env, you're going to see a lot of environmental variables. Again, env will bring up a lot of environmental variables. But again, we haven't really talked about environmental variables. We'll talk about them at some point. This is where the system stores certain information that applications can have access to them, kind of like in a central place to store stuff for different applications. You can see here, for example, the system know the current user, and so if I say echo user, it's going to print my name. Remember, it's all capital letters. If I do echo user small letter or small letters, it doesn't mean anything to Linux. Environmental variables, if they are typed in capital, you must have to type them in capital. And in fact, most environmental variables get entered in capital letters. Okay. All right. So far, I've introduced the Linux file system hierarchy, showing you the top level directories. You understand what the root directory means because everything starts from there. And when you're trying to do your navigation, it's very important to understand that because, for example, there's something we call the absolute path and relative path to a file. Again, remember, there's a difference between absolute and relative. Let me show you by a demo. So right now I'm here. Okay, if I create a directory here and I say make directory class, I can say cd class, and the system is going to see it because from where I type the command, class is there. ls-al, class is there, so the system is able to find it. At the same time, if I do pwd, I see that location or that directory path. I can also do cd home, my name, desktop, practice, and class. I can navigate from starting from the root directory, and that is what we call the absolute. Absolute here means we're starting from the root. Okay, and once we start from the root, we can trace it step by step to where we are at the moment. If you don't know where you are, again, pwd will also help you, will always help you to find it. But in this case, this command here, cd, all of that, when I enter, compared to when I was here and I do cd class, they're equivalent. cd class here is relative, meaning from where I start looking for class based on where I am at the moment. Absolute means go and actually start from the root. Start from the root and find this for me. Okay, so you're going to find that very useful in different scenarios when you're trying to find something. Sometimes you need the absolute part, sometimes you need the relative part. So for example, to understand the relative part again, now if I say pwd, I see practice. If I say ls, I have class. Okay, I can go into class from here, but if I go here, I'm now out of that directory. So if I say go to class, it's not going to find it because class is not here. Class is inside practice. So I can say practice class. That will go there because we're starting from where we are. So we start from where we are, which is we have practice here. Inside practice, we have class. So we need to specify how to get there. Okay. In the same way, if I'm back here, now pwd, and here I can go to cd desktop. If I want to take it step by step, then I can go into practice, and then from there I can go into class. Okay, so see how I'm taking it step by step. So the whole idea here is keep practicing until you understand the differences between relative part and absolute part. Relative, start from where you are to find what you're looking for. If you're looking for a directory, try to see if that directory exists in this directory. If it doesn't, then the system will complain. But absolute means go back and start from the root directory, start from where the system will find it, and point it all the way there. Okay, and when you're writing programs like bash scripting, it's very important to use absolute part because you don't know where the user may be running that program from or from that bash script from. If you don't specify the absolute part, if you specify the relative, and the directory is not where the user is trying to look for it, Linux will complain and it won't be able to do what you want it to do. So absolute part can be very useful, especially when you're writing scripts. Okay, so that is where we're going to end this for today. I hope you find that video useful in learning your directory structure and being able to navigate both from the CLI and from your GUI. And again, we're going to continue with this series. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you can continue to learn Linux and AI and cloud and Kubernetes and Docker and all the cool stuff that people are learning today to get a job. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.